Hey future freelancer. In this video, we will talk about all the different pricing types and when you should use each one.
I'll make them pay.
First, you got your basic hourly rate. The pros of this are that it's the easiest to set up, it's the least amount of pushback from clients, helps avoid scope creep, and it's typically required on most freelancer marketplaces, regardless if you end up using a different pricing model. The cons are that it's usually the least profitable and it requires time tracking, which can lead to clients micromanaging you, which is the actual worst. You can use the hourly model when you're not sure how to price a project or if the project is not clearly defined in terms of scope. Next, you have hourly retainers. This is my personal favorite. In this model, a client is paying to retain you for a set number of hours. You may or may not actually work all of those hours. It will depend on the workload for that month or whatever set time frame you agree to. Here's how I do this with my clients. I normally charge $4K per month, which is retaining me for 40 hours, but rarely do I actually work the 40 hours. Let's say the work only took 5 hours. The remaining 35 hours is pure profit for me. Pure profit, okay? Now, businesses actually like this model too because they may have random influxes in workload some weeks and may need more time from you some weeks and then other weeks need less. So the pros are more money in your pocket, consistent income, and no time tracking. The cons are it could lead to unpredictable workload and you may get more rejections when starting out until you build up your profile. You should use this whenever you have a client that doesn't really have a clear project scope and the influx of work is going to vary from week to week. Third, you have project-based retainers, or also known as flat rate retainers. In this model, a client is paying you for a set deliverable or a scope of work, as opposed to retaining you for a set number of hours. For example, if you're building them a website, you can include a scope of work that has 3 pages. Let's say it's a home page, an about page, and a contact us page. The pros of this flat rate model is that it gives you a predetermined project deliverable, so you won't get random tasks for the client that are outside of the scope of the project. And it helps you know how much income you're going to have coming in because it's consistent. Last, a client actually knows how much they're going to pay each month, so they tend to prefer this model too. The cons are a shorter project duration, so clients may not stay on with you for a long time, so now you have to keep hunting for more clients. And if you price this incorrectly, it could cost you big time. So let's say in this website that you decided to charge $500 because you think it's going to take 10 hours, but it actually ends up taking 20 hours. Now you're taking a pretty big loss on the project. So I would actually only use this type of pricing whenever you know how long a project is going to take you on average to avoid you being, overworked and undercharged, which is what we're trying to avoid, right? Jill actually prefers this type of pricing. She does all of her clients on flat rate retainers. She does this by saying that she's only going to run ads on a specific scope for an ongoing basis. So she might manage the podcast ads for a company on an ongoing basis, but they're not necessarily retaining her for a set number of hours. The last pricing type is called rev share pricing. This won't work for every industry, but it's very popular in the marketing and sales industry. In this model, you're basically creating an agreement with a company that's going to pay you a percentage of their revenue for the revenue that you generated. Here's an example of how I could set this up. I run ads for clients, right? Let's say that my ads brought in over 100K of sales that month, and I had an agreement with them that I get 10% of whatever I generate. In that scenario, I get paid 10K for that month. That's the pro of this model. It could be a great way to build somewhat passive income and is much more scalable than the other pricing models. The problem is actually tracking your revenue. As privacy continues to grow in the marketing space, it's hard to directly attribute your types of sales versus other types of sales the company might be doing. And clients may say this as well. They'll say that they don't think that you brought in 100K in sales and that you only brought in 20K. So instead of me getting paid 10K, I'm getting paid 2K. That's crazy, right? But that's actually the reality of this model. It's very high risk and it's very high reward. I would actually avoid using this pricing model unless you know with over 70% confidence that you can prove the revenue you generate. In terms of how you're going to transition across your freelance timeline, you may end up starting out with hourly rates just to get some gigs and figure out how long things take you, but you should switch to retainer-based or project-based pricing as soon as possible, because this is going to allow you to make more income while working less. And you can get there faster by time tracking for yourself, regardless if the client's hourly or not. For example, I'm tracking all of my client activities. I do this so I can look back at how many hours I worked for the client over the past month. It helps me assess of the 4K that I charged, how much of that is going to go to work and how much is going to go to profit. And before you get into this mindset of thinking, oh my God, how can you charge them that much, but you're not working for them the hours you agreed to? You have to remember that they are paying for a specific outcome, not for your butt to be in a chair from 9 to 5. This is a very big difference between being a full-time employee and a freelancer. You're getting paid to bring a specific value. You're not getting paid specifically for the hours you work on average. Now, you're going to make this transition and you're going to understand how much value or impact you bring. So as you increase the value or impact that you bring to a business, the higher you can charge. Here's how this works for me. I charge them 4K, right? If they are making more than 4K in sales, let's say they make 100K off of me, they are happily going to pay me $4,000 because that's a great ROI. So they're really okay with me charging 4K because they're always going to make more than that and they're always getting results, regardless if I worked 40 hours or not. So keep that in mind when you are doing these new pricing models, that it's okay to not fully work all of those hours because they're paying you for an outcome and results, not for your time. Now, for Jill, she does this by adding it directly to her Upwork profile. She writes, "Don't worry about calculating percentage of media spend. My contracts are flat rate and start at $2,500 per month." You could add something like this to your own profile. Let's say, "I only offer project-based retainers, so you know exactly what you'll pay instead of hourly. These retainers start at $2,500 per month. Send me a message if you have any questions. Thanks." The great part about that message is that clients, again, will get to figure out how much they're expected to pay each month. They enjoy this as opposed to randomly getting charged $2,000 one week and then $20 whatever the next week. It's much more consistent for their expenses, and they get someone kind of on standby, you in this case, to help them with whatever they need at that moment.
That's what I'm here for.
As long as you're doing that same thing, you're focusing on the value you're providing, most clients won't hesitate at your retainer-based pricing. Also, in all of these payment models, except for hourly, you need to try to get a deposit before you start work to avoid chasing payments. Chasing payments basically means a client owes you money, but they haven't paid you, so you're literally chasing them down trying to get the money. And a deposit is a great way to mitigate this. It's basically a fixed amount of money that you and the client will agree on paying upfront before any work is done. This is a common practice and reduces the risk for freelancers. Businesses typically don't mind paying deposits because they're used to freelancers asking for them. And if they do mind and don't want to pay you a deposit, you probably shouldn't work for them because that's a red flag.
Hey, red flag, everybody.
We're going to get more into deposits in an upcoming module. There was a lot covered here, so let's do a quick recap. First, there are 4 other main pricing types outside of hourly. You have the hourly itself, you have the retainer model, a project-based model, and revenue share. You're likely going to start out at hourly and work your way into retainer-based pricing. Now that you have an idea of how the pricing is going to work, you need to start working on your mindset. There will be a time where sometimes your income drops. It might even go to 0 one month. But that's the price to pay to get full-time freedom and not be stuck behind a desk all day doing a job you hate. And it is so worth it.
Totally worth it.
Your action items for today are to add pricing to your Upwork profile if you haven't already, and also start to think about what are all the different ways that you can price and what should those rates be. You could also look at other freelancers' profiles to give you an idea.